guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow, and I am back with an all new video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil channeled energy reading into the zodiac. So we are not just going to be exploring when it originated and why it originated. We're also going to be looking into some of the influences of astrocartography and what might be the long-term prognosis of astrology. This and so much more. So if that sounds good to you, please stick around, and if not, I will catch you at another video. Now, before we dive in to the energy reading portion, I'm just going to start by sharing some basic bitch, three-dimensional information into what astrology is. Now, the reason that I am saying it is basic bitch is because there are literally people that have been studying the zodiac signs in astrology for like 40 years, and they're like, I'm still learning about it. So trust me when I say this is about as basic bitch on a zodiac can get. But here's the thing. It still applies to the energy reading portion, and that's why I am sharing it. And it's also not because I don't think that anybody that is watching this video is not going to know what the zodiac is. But again, I just want to, keep some of the information fresh in your mind, because it's going to directly come into play when we explore the energy reading. So here we go. The zodiac is a diagram that shows the position of the stars and planets. It is divided into 12 sections, each with a symbol and a name. Astrologers use the zodiac to calculate the influence of the planets on people's lives. Now, as I just stated, there's 12 various different signs, and they comprise the 12 different months of the year. Each of the sign also has a corresponding symbol that is said to influence some innate traits or characteristics about the person that is born to that month. Now, what are the 12 zodiac signs and what are their symbols? There is Aries, which is the first zodiac sign, and the symbol of it is the ram. There is Taurus, the bull, Gemini, the twins, Cancer, the crab, Leo, the lion, Virgo, the virgin, Libra, the scales, Scorpio, which is represented by a scorpion, Sagittarius, which is the centaur, Capricorn, the mountain goat, Aquarius, the water bearer, and Pisces, the fish. In addition to there being 12 signs, they are also further divided into 4 elements. There is fire, earth, air, and water. What are the signs in each of the elements? Fire is comprised of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Earth is Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Air is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And water is Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So that concludes the basic bitch three-dimensional share on the zodiac. We are now going to be getting into the channeled psychic energy reading on the zodiac. So here we go. The zodiac is ancient, like thousands of years ancient, because it was shown to me as starting back in ancient Egypt. The pharaohs, because yes, there was more than one, there were various different pharaohs, it spanned an entire time period, had different advisors. And their pharaohs not only wanted the advisors to be the most learned and the most wise so that they could impart the most wisdom onto the pharaohs, they also wanted the advisors to have an incredible category of information under their belt, so that way they could further impart that wisdom onto the pharaohs, and the pharaohs, at least in their mind, would always have some sort of an advantage because their advisors contained the biggest category and library of information. And not all of the information that these advisors had were things that they were studying in a library. They had a lot of real life experiences as well. So to that end, the advisors were expected and encouraged to spend up to 6 hours per day in studies of various different kinds. Some of the advisors' studying was done solo and independent, and some of it was also done in collaboration with other advisors. Now, the advisors also had apprentices because, as I had just said, the pharaohs spanned an extensive time period. So you could have one advisor that spent 40 years studying a particular subject. They're getting up there in the years, and they're going to be retiring, or they're going to be, crossing over soon. So they would also have an apprentice advisor that they could impart all of their knowledge and all of their wisdom onto. So it's kind of like one advisor passing the baton onto another one. And they might actually have like up to 3 different advisors that were studying under them, and the one that understood the concept the most or showed the most promise in it, that was the one that would actually take over from the one main particular advisor in any subject. But all of this studying was done with the intention of knowing a lot about a variety of different subjects. But some of the advisors also had specialized. So they were not just studying a bunch of different information, but they would really be like an expert in their field. So look at it like this. By today's standards, this would be the equivalent of somebody getting a general education, such as like high school education, versus somebody that's going to become a doctor. So for somebody to become a doctor after high school, they have to first complete 4 years of university, then they have to complete 4 years of medical school, then they have to do 4 years of rotations. And then even further, if somebody wants to become like a plastic surgeon, after completing medical school and residency, they have to go on and they have to do further education and specialization in learning not just about the body as a whole, but like the micro muscles that are in a person's face. It's very, very detailed, and it's very extensive in the amount of education for one to really become an expert in their field. But a lot of the information that these advisors were studying were not necessarily things that were only going to be found in books. So they spent a lot of time out of the pharaoh's advisory rooms where they were studying various different topics that could range from negotiations to crops and agriculture, building and development, conflict resolutions, body language, astrology, etc. Now, one such advisor that first started out as a body language advisor started to notice that there were some connections between different kinds of people. So he started to classify people into various different archetypes. What were those archetypes? There were 4 of them. Fiery people, emotional people, cerebral people, like the thinkers, and the most grounded and logical people. And from there, he also had devised subtypes to them as well. And again, because he was a body language expert, and there was not a lot of text, certainly not in ancient Egypt, about body language, where was he getting his education from up to 6 hours a day? Yes, he was spending a lot of time with the pharaoh, watching both the way that the pharaoh was holding himself, maybe perhaps the way the pharaoh's children, the spouse of the pharaoh, the people that served the pharaoh, how their body language was different, the various different people that were coming to speak with the pharaoh. He was also going out into the markets to see when people were purchasing, what was their body language, How is the body language different from the person that was selling the goods to the person that was buying it? If they were haggling, what was their body language like? So he was spending a lot of time out there observing all of these different things, all of the different nuances with his eyes. So body language and the analysis of it is also thousands of years old. And this was done so that he could best advise the pharaoh on the kind of person that he would be dealing with. So he would know how to best relate to even talk to the various types of people that would come to the pharaoh. So for example, if the pharaoh was speaking with somebody and he noticed that the person, through the advisement of the advisor that specialized in body language, if he would notice that this person was much more cerebral and they were thinking about like the big picture and the big concepts, he would say to them, so what do you think about this? But if he was speaking with somebody that was a more emotional kind, he would say, what do you feel? How do you feel about this? So it was all done with the intention of having some sort of an advantage in the way in which the pharaoh could best relate to and to know how to speak to the people that came to see him. So how does this apply to the zodiac? Well, the body language expert was discussing his findings, because they worked in collaboration sometimes, with the star forecasting expert, as in the pharaoh's astrologer. And voila, the zodiac, or at least in its infancy, was born. Because these two, in their collaboration, could see there were trends and similarities in the different archetypes based on particular times of birth. But before they even started to classify it into months of birth, because that's like super micro. That's like going into like the real details and the real depth. They started first macro. They were like looking big picture. So they were first looking at the various different seasons that a person was born in. How could that influence a person? But then they also started to think about it, and they realized even if somebody was born in a particular different season, could there be other environmental influences that would influence them as well? Such as, because this is the Mediterranean, and ostensibly, to the best of my knowledge anyway, it doesn't snow in Egypt. So let's say they were getting a visitor from another location around the globe. They would start to observe, depending on the location that person came from, could the location and the season also impact their body language? So I don't know if they receive people like from as far away as Russia. Excuse my ignorance. I'm an energy reader, for God's sakes. But let's say they received somebody that was coming all the way from Siberia. It's fucking cold. So if somebody is coming from a cold location where they're primarily spending the most amount of time in a cold location, could that impact the person's body language? Because in the winter, we stiffen up. Our body is more stiff. Our body language then therefore will be more tight. It might not be as expressive. So they were starting to also analyze if the person was coming from a cold location, could that also impact their body language and the way in which they were going to show up in Egypt when they were coming there? So first they were starting to look at the different seasons that a person was born into. Could the person show up differently if they were born in winter versus summer? Could that impact them? In addition to that, they were also exploring if somebody was born on an equinox, a full or a new moon, plus eclipses. And they would also start to explore if the seasons the person was born into and the months could also influence their overall health and vitality, skin conditions they may have had, and even their dispositions. They were advanced even in the infancy of the formation of the zodiac system. So if they were exploring the different seasons that a person was born into and connecting that perhaps to different similarities that they were exploring about people based on seasons and months they were born into, does that in fact mean there are only 12 months? Good question, right? So, first and foremost, before I answer that question, I'm going to tell you, time has been messed with. And you don't have to take my word for it, because a moment ago I was just like, well, I'm just an energy reader. I don't know a lot about 3D facts. Fair point. I give you that. But that's why I supplement my energy reading with three-dimensional information. Time has literally been messed with. Not just twice a year in our understanding of time with daylight savings time, right? Like depending on the season, an hour of the day vanishes. Where does it go? Into a portal? We don't know, it's gone. And then in the opposite time of year, that 1 hour of the day suddenly comes back to us. So it came out of the portal, like again, it vanished into a portal, it came out of the portal. Okay, where does time, what even is time? It's a fucking man-made construct, first and foremost. Not to say that it's not real, not to say that time doesn't really pass, it does. It's just to say that our understanding of the way that time works is completely man-made. Now, in addition to that, the Roman calendar used to only consist of 10 months. So does that mean the Roman calendar only had 12 signs? In the year 46 BC, Julius Caesar added 3 months to the calendar to have it line up with the seasons. And 1 extra month was added after February, and 2 additional months were added after November. That made the calendar 445 days long. However, in 1582, a new calendar was adopted, which trimmed the calendar that we have now in modern day times down to 12 months. So the calendar used to be 10, then it was 13, now it's 12. So how does that potentially impact our understanding of the way that the zodiac works? So it was shown to me that there are at least 2 or 3 additional archetypes or character profiles created that were either lost with time or they were kicked out to fit the narrative of there only being 12 months. There were also some additional profiles that were classless, not as in they have no class and they are uncouth. No, as in they were either still being studied by the advisors and still being worked on. So these 2 to 3 additional months could be connected to other calendar months, or they could be additional archetypes that did not necessarily fit a mold of the classifications that the advisors had already come up with. But there are definitely additional ones. Now, I was also shown that an enormous amount of information was lost in time. Thus, our current understanding and knowledge of the zodiac and even astrology, and no matter how advanced somebody is in their study of the zodiac and astrology or how long one has been studying, is not even scratching the surface of what these advisors knew back then. Imagine, and that was like in the infancy of the zodiac. They still knew more than we know now. So imagine how much they knew. Now, part of the reason for this was because this was the marrying of body language analysis and astrology. So that was enabling the advisors to truly see and understand a person on a completely deeper and fundamental level. And so much of astrology today is just about a person's natal chart. And while that is, of course, a part of it, it is not, in fact, all of what they knew back then, even in the infancy of the zodiac. So it's kind of, if you will, the equivalent of somebody that doesn't even know like the basic bitch information about astrology. They just know like what their sun sign is. So it's like, okay, I was born in January, I'm a Capricorn. I was born in February, I'm an Aquarius. So the amount of information that we know today is the equivalent of somebody that knows nothing about astrology but their sun sign. So really, like, ruminate on that for a moment and imagine how much more they actually knew and how much was lost in time. And while I definitely don't know what they knew, because not all of it was shown to me, what was shown to me is that their understanding of astrology and the zodiac is somehow connected to math. I know, I was like, I don't get that. I need clarification here. And no, it is not just because of the angles, oppositions, or trines that would be in somebody's natal chart, but as in, it is somehow coded into the makeup of the universe. And it was also previously shown to me that math and our understanding of math is missing a boatload of information too. But that math is also somehow connected to the makeup of the universe. It's like coded in to the creation and the very fabric of how the universe was created, math. So astrology being connected to math is also connected to the makeup of the universe somehow. Now I'm also going to share with you, sometimes things are shown to me and I don't understand what's being shown to me because there's no subsequent of what it connects to that I understand, that I can relay the information into you. So for example, let's say my guides would show me a cap of a pen. I would say, this is somehow connected to a pen, right? Because the pen and the cap go together. But let's say this is hundreds of years ago and I was shown a pen. Before I knew what a pen was, before I knew, a pen, I can write with it. So I might be shown something without the corresponding information that helps me understand how it's connected to something I do know about. So this would kind of be like the equivalent of like I meet up with a friend who's in medical school and she's got her med book with her. Can I read the words that are written on the page? Yes. Do I understand them? No, not necessarily, because I'm not in medical school. I can read them, but I don't understand them. So how the zodiac and astrology is like built into the very fabric of the foundation of the universe. Yeah, it's shown to me, but I don't actually understand how it is connected to the foundation and the fabric of the universe. Maybe the guides will share that information with me at a later date, because yes, that tends to happen. But as of right now, they haven't shared that with me. But what was shown to me is that the zodiac is also somehow connected to India's Ayurvedic medical system. What's the Ayurvedic medical system? This is the medical system that was devised in India, where they're looking into the 4 various different doshas or body types that a person might have, and the particular needs that a person has in terms of medical care based on what their dosha is. What are the doshas? There is Vata, Pitta, Kapha, or some sort of blend of 1, 2, or 3 of the other different body types. So they have devised an entire system, or at least back then, where I'm not saying they follow it now, maybe they do. I don't know how far like the tentacles and the reach of like the Western medical system has gone, but certainly when they had devised the Ayurvedic medical system, like depending on what your dosha was, like there's certain foods to abstain from or certain foods that are more beneficial for you. And then depending on the dosha would also determine how to best treat them medically. So it was shown to me that the Ayurvedic medical system is also somehow connected to zodiac and astrology, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And I'm going to probably guess it was unknowingly. But it was also shown that when it is paired together, it can provide incredible insights in diagnosing and treating a person based on astrology. And if you stop and think about it, is it really a surprise to think that someone with a lot of fire in their chart might have different needs than somebody that has a lot of water in their chart? And this also got me thinking about Eastern medicine. Yes, I know that India is technically considered East. I'm talking like Far East, like Chinese medicine. So in Chinese medicine, they assess a person's disposition when they go to see a Chinese medical practitioner, the qi and the vitality of the person, their body language, their pulse, etc. And aren't these also somehow connected to astrology? Maybe not the person's pulse, but their disposition. Doesn't this also sound exactly like what the advisors were studying back then? A person's disposition based on the season that they were born in? So maybe Chinese medicine too has unknowingly been working with the zodiac signs or an archetype of a person as well, or at least in the infancy of Chinese medicine. And also, 2% personal opinion, maybe one of the biggest failings of Western medicine is the desire to make us all the same. Because no matter the system in a vacuum, and without taking else about a person into account, we are told whatever the symptom is, there's a pill for that. Does this particular pill work for our chi or our vitality? Doesn't matter. Does it work for our disposition? Doesn't matter. Does it harmonize us? Doesn't matter. So the marrying and the combination of astrology in association with varying different medical systems is real and beneficial. So if it's real and beneficial as it connects to medical systems, then of course it's also real as it pertains to it existing in its own right. And as I had shared with you a moment ago, it is even in fact somehow coded into the very foundation and fabric of the creation of the universe. Even if our understanding of it is limited. Just because we don't see something doesn't make it any less real. Just like the things I see on the other side of the veil. Just because we don't understand something doesn't make it any less real, right? If you ask a 2-year-old some sort of an advanced math concept, they're not going to be able to understand what you're saying. But that doesn't mean the advanced math concept you're discussing with them isn't real. People also have biases about things like this. So if you wanted to know what I think the long-term prognosis for astrology in fact is, it is as follows. We are in fact just starting to scratch the surface. And I see incredible growth connected to our understanding and the expansion and the reach of astrology as well. And it was shown to me specifically as it pertains to astrocartography. Now, astrocartography is location astrology, which compares a person's birth chart to that of the globe. and the various different influences of where certain planets will line up on the globe as it overlays and interlaps with a person's natal chart. So for example, I have Saturn and Pluto running down the entire east coast of the United States. Those are hella heavy energies to work with. Not just Pluto, not just Saturn, both of them. So that means my energy as it plays with or interacts with a particular location, like the entire east coast of the United States, is going to feel very heavy. It's going to feel very dense. And the experiences that I'm going to have there are going to be connected to the influences of Saturn, hard work paying off, Pluto, transformation. But let's say somebody else has the sun running down the east coast of the United States for them. They will have a completely different experience when they're in a location like that, because the sun is light, it's expansive, it's playful, it's all about a person's identity. So that person might feel when they're on the east coast of the United States like they're really coming into themselves when they're there. So they might feel expansive energy, whereas I feel like that compressed energy. That's what astrocartography is. And because all of us have different charts, that also means the influences of the planets as it overlaps with our natal chart is going to be very, very different. So, because I have also previously seen that people are going to start to be leaving big cities and moving into perhaps more country areas, maybe building their own homestead with their vibe tribe. So they might be going out and exploring when they're ready to move out of a city into various different locations, and then having the awareness of the way that the energy is interacting with them, even if they don't know that it's what astrocartography is, could actually lead them to exploring astrocartography. So I do see a lot of expansion in terms of people's curiosity and awareness about how their own personal energy interacts with that of their environment. In addition to astrocartography, I also see a lot more curiosity and education and information being readily available about a particular city or state's date of incorporation, because that in fact also is astrology. Just like we ourselves can all have a personal zodiac chart, locations around the world also do, depending on the date that they became incorporated or they became part of, let's say, the United States as a whole. So if a particular city has like, the incorporation date is in June, that would make that place Gemini. Gemini is an air sign. So the blueprint of that one particular location might be where there's a lot of like an exchange of ideas and information and communication. But then juxtapose that to a place that maybe has an incorporation date in one of the earth signs. The influence of that location is going to be like a lot more grounded, and it might be more about like finance, banking, or institutions, or agriculture, or building and development. Because the locations absolutely can also be influenced not just by the existence of the ley lines, but also the incorporation date. So I think this is going to become a big thing as well. And new information will also be obtained about the zodiac and astrology as more and more of us are waking up and ascending. And then therefore, our collective vibration as it rises will continue to evaporate the veil. And what is on the other side of the veil? Knowledge, expansion, and bliss. So I guess there's just one question to ask. Who's ready? I will take all that knowledge, expansion, and bliss. And you can let me know if you're down for that as well. So this concludes my reading into the zodiac. I hope that you have found it to be interesting and insightful, maybe even thought-provoking. I encourage you to please take what resonates, to leave the rest behind. And this is your reminder until next time, to stay in that high vibration so we can burn the veil down.